The village gathered under a sky heavy with clouds. Heads bowed, hands clasped, and voices hushed. The people stood around the freshly dug grave. Women hummed low funeral songs, their melodies trembling with grief. The air smelled of damp earth and burning incense, but underneath it all lingered something sharper. Fear. Whispers passed from one mourner to the next, their words veiled in superstition. She didn't just die. Something unnatural happened. One murmured. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A boy broke the solemnity with a cry that shattered their quiet. Her eyes! I saw them move. She looked at me. The child pointed a trembling finger toward the wooden coffin, now half covered in dirt. Mothers pulled their children close. Men exchanged uneasy glances, their faces shadowed by doubt. One voice muttered, "Witchcraft." Another said, "It's a bad omen." The whispers grew louder. Words like curse and dark magic floated above the crowd. Elders raised their hands to quiet them, but the unease refused to fade. Dumisani watched in silence. Standing, apart from the others, his expression was unreadable, yet his mind swirled with questions. As the village's spiritual healer, he could feel something was wrong. The air felt too heavy, too full of sorrow and suspicion. He tightened his grip on his staff. The women's voices grew strained as they spoke of the body. "Her face," one said, shuddering. "It was torn." Another whispered, "I heard they had to wrap her in cloth to hide the marks." They crossed themselves, praying silently to keep the evil away. The elders stepped forward to demand order. Their voices were stern, their words unyielding. "Focus on the rituals," they said. "Honor the dead. Do not provoke the spirits." Yet even they seemed unsettled, their eyes darting nervously toward the coffin. The tension deepened as old grievances surfaced. Beneath the whispers of witchcraft, another rumor began to take shape. Some recalled the bitter dispute over land between Nyasha's family and another clan. Accusations swirled, quieter now but no less dangerous. Tendai stood apart, avoiding the healer's gaze. His shoulders hunched, his head lowered. He muttered the ceremonial prayers, but his voice lacked conviction. Dumisani noticed. His sharp eyes lingered on the man, who looked as though he carried a weight too heavy to bear. Dumisani's thoughts churned as he left the gathering. The elders had warned against stirring unrest, but his heart told him there was more to uncover. A healer's duty, he reminded himself, was to seek truth, even when others feared it. That night, Nyasha's voice came to him in a dream. Her tone was urgent, her words piercing. "Find the truth," she said, her face shadowed yet unmistakable. "Do not let them bury the lies with me." Dumisani awoke drenched in sweat, her plea echoing in his mind. The baobab tree stood tall, its gnarled branches stretching wide, casting shadows across the village. Beneath its ancient canopy, life thrived in rhythm with traditions. The elders spoke of its roots as threads connecting the living to the ancestors. Decisions were made here, and whispers of wisdom passed between generations. It loomed large over the daily lives of the people, offering both comfort and a reminder of the past. The air smelled of burning incense. The steady rhythm of drums echoed, faintly, carrying a message of unity, but unease rippled beneath the surface. Villagers moved cautiously, their gazes darting toward one another. The recent events had left them restless, their silence filled with tension. The weight of a legacy hung heavy. The healer stood still, gripping the carved staff passed down through his bloodline. His grandfather's name was whispered with reverence, a man who brought balance to the village in the face of chaos. The healer knew the eyes of the people, now turned to him, seeking guidance. "The spirits watch us," the elders had said to him once. "They demand respect, and they do not tolerate hesitation. He felt the pressure of this truth in every step he took. The struggle to balance worlds became clear. The healer turned his thoughts inward. Tradition demanded strict adherence, yet he saw the signs of change in the younger villagers, a shift toward questioning the old ways. He stood at the crossroads, one foot in the past and the other in the present. The silence of the crowd reminded him of the unspoken expectations they placed on his shoulders. A family hid in the shadows. The husband stood apart, his movements stiff and deliberate, avoiding the healer's gaze. His hands clenched and unclenched, betraying his inner turmoil. Beside him, the daughter's face was a mask, but her eyes flickered with something unspoken. Fear, guilt, or both. The voice returned in the still of night. The healer lay on his mat, his breathing even, when her voice called to him again. It was sharp and pleading. "Do not forget me," it said. "They will bury the truth with my bones." He sat up, sweat running down his face, the words etched into his mind. Questions met with silence. The healer approached the family, his tone firm and searching. "What do you hide?" he asked. The husband shook his head, his denial quick and defensive. The daughter stood still, her lips pressed tight. No answers came, but their fear spoke volumes. Rumors of a ritual spread like wildfire. Whispers reached the healer's ears, accounts of a gathering before her death, symbols drawn in the dirt, candles burned low under the moon. They said it was meant to bring change, but some rituals carried risks the villagers feared to name aloud. The healer's resolve deepened. He stepped back from the family's silence, his hands tightening on his staff. The spirits called for justice, and he would answer. Whatever the cost, the truth would rise. The elders delivered their warning. "Leave this alone," they said, their words measured but firm. "Do not disturb the dead. You risk inviting chaos into the village." The healer listened, but their caution only fueled his determination. "The spirits have spoken," he murmured. "I will follow where they lead." The nights grew heavier with voices that refused to stay silent. The healer lay still, his eyes shut, but his mind churned. Nyasha's voice broke through the darkness. "Do not wait. You must act." The urgency in her tone tightened his chest. Her words grew louder, sharper, each one cutting through the veil of sleep. He woke with a gasp, her plea echoing in his ears. At the family's door, the air bristled with tension. He stood firm, his questions direct. "What happened before her death? What are you hiding?" The husband's words stumbled over themselves. "There's nothing to hide." His hands trembled as he spoke, his eyes darting toward the ground. The daughter stood silent, her arms folded tightly. Her gaze was defiant but uneasy. The healer's voice turned sharp. "Secrets cannot stay buried forever. They will rise, just as her voice rises in the night." Still the family gave no answers, only silence thick with guilt. The healer sought wisdom beyond his own. He walked to the home of the spiritual guide, whose connection to the unseen world was known throughout the village. "Her voice haunts me," he said. "She calls for truth, but it slips through my hands. Help me hear what I cannot see." The guide closed her eyes, her breathing slowing as she reached into the realm of the spirits. Her voice came low and steady. There was a ritual, a gathering not long before her death. It was meant to bring transformation, but such power does not come without risk. The truth lay hidden in the pages of the past. Together they searched, through the belongings Nyasha had left behind. In the corner of a faded journal, a name appeared again and again. Each word spoke of a love forbidden, a bond that defied the boundaries of clans. The name carried the weight of conflict. The rival leader was known for his charm and ruthless ambition. His presence in Nyasha's life was a dangerous thread, woven into an already fragile tapestry. Their affair, secret but intense, was enough to ignite tensions between their people. The love they shared carried consequences. The journal's pages revealed how the affair had sparked anger and distrust, feeding the fires of an ongoing land dispute. It was a love story written in shadows, its price paid in whispers and blood. A young warrior stepped into the light. The healer's search drew the attention of a figure from the rival clan. "I can help you," he said, his tone calm, but his eyes sharp. "There is more to this than you know." The offer seemed sincere, but the healer felt the weight of unspoken motives behind the words. Shadows cast long, deceptive shapes. The deeper the healer delved, the more he saw alliances shifting around him. The young warrior's actions raised questions, and the healer's trust began to waver. Something darker moved beneath the surface. The storm gathered strength. The healer saw how the death of one woman had become a spark in a growing storm of political and spiritual unrest. Rivalries deepened, and the threads of the mystery tangled with the village's fragile peace. The truth burned brighter, closer than expected. As the healer pieced together the clues, the signs began to point inward. Betrayal, not from outside forces, but from within Nyasha's own family, loomed large. The healer's breath caught, and a single question filled his mind. Who can be trusted? The shrine stood illuminated by the flickering fire. Shadows danced on the faces of those gathered. Each step forward carried the weight of judgment. The air was thick with tension, and no one spoke until the healer raised his voice, summoning them to account for their actions. The sacred relics encircled them, silent witnesses. The carved masks of ancestors stared from their wooden perches, and the totems of protection gleamed under the firelight. The energy of the past swirled around the gathering, pressing down with the weight of ancestral power. The healer turned to the leader of the rival clan. His words cut through the stillness like a blade. "You betrayed her. Your affair was no secret, Kofi. You placed her in danger, knowing the storm it would bring." Kofi's voice rose, his anger sharp. "Do not speak to me of betrayal. You know nothing of what happened. I loved her, truly, but I did not harm her. I had no reason to." His fists clenched as he stepped forward, his presence commanding, but his words betrayed a crack in his defense. The healer's gaze shifted. He pointed toward the husband, his voice steady. "And you? What did you know? Why do your hands tremble, while your mouth denies?" The husband's head hung low. His words broke through the silence, trembling but clear. "I found the letters. I found them together. My love for her was not enough. She betrayed me." His breath hitched, and his voice cracked as he continued. "I could not let her humiliate me." The weight of his jealousy spilled forth. "I planned it all," he confessed. "I made it look like Kofi's doing. I thought no one would question a man like him, a leader who takes what he wants without consequence." His eyes burned with shame, yet his voice carried the burden of his choices, the truth unraveled into chaos. Kofi's anger exploded, his voice a roar of disbelief. "You took her life, and for what? To protect your pride? You call me a betrayer, but you, her own husband, are the one who ended her." The healer's voice cut through the rising anger. "Enough! The spirits demand truth, and the truth has spoken." A sudden wind stirred the flames. The fire roared higher, and the air filled with a low hum. Eyes turned toward the shrine as a voice echoed from beyond. "You have brought ruin to this village with your lies." It was her voice, Nyasha's voice, sharp and clear. The villagers gasped as her eyes opened, The body that had lain still now glowed with a supernatural light. Her gaze pierced through the guilty, unblinking, and unyielding. The spirit's judgment was swift. Jealousy, pride, greed. You let them guide your hearts and darken your souls. You betrayed not just me, but the land and the ancestors who watch over it. The fire roared higher, sparks flying into the night sky. The villagers cowered, some dropping to their knees, others frozen in awe. The shrine trembled as her voice grew louder. This village will not fall to your selfishness. I will guard it from harm, but you must change your ways. No more lies, no more deceit. The healer stepped forward. He raised his staff, calling for calm. She has spoken. Let us heed her words and cleanse this place of the darkness we have sown. Her ceremonial fire was lit. The villagers, one by one, threw tokens of their guilt and shame into the flames. The air grew lighter as voices joined together in song, a hymn of unity and repentance. The shrine grew still once more. The light from the fire dimmed, and the relics seemed to settle. The healer turned to the villagers. We have seen the cost of greed and betrayal. Let this fire be the start of healing. Let us honor her by honoring the truth. The village stood united under the watchful eyes of the ancestors. The spirit of Nyasha lingered, her presence a reminder and a protector, ensuring no harm would come from deceit again. The village buzzed with whispers and tension. The shocking revelations hung over the community like a storm cloud. Neighbors avoided each other's eyes, fear and mistrust growing in the wake of Nyasha's story. The once harmonious rhythm of daily life had been shattered, leaving silence. Where laughter had been, the elders gathered in somber agreement. He cannot stay, one said. Another nodded, her voice steady. His presence will poison the village further. Let him carry his shame beyond our borders. The husband stood at the edge of the crowd, his head bowed. His voice cracked as he pleaded. I was blinded by love, by jealousy. I only wanted to protect what was mine. But his words fell on deaf ears. The elders raised their hands, their decision final. He turned away, his figure shrinking as he walked toward the horizon, his cries swallowed by the winds. The rival clan bristled at the accusations. You think the truth ends here? Do you think we will let this stain our honor? Their voices were sharp, their anger palpable. Fear spread through the villagers as talk of retaliation grew louder. We should prepare for war, someone whispered, their tone trembling. Dumasani stood at the center of it all. His heart ached under the weight of their questions, their fears. The healer was meant to bring peace, not lead in times of conflict. Yet the village looked to him for guidance. This is not what I was trained for, he thought, his grip on his staff tightening. But deep inside he knew he could not stand aside. The fire was prepared under Amina's watchful eye. The flames roared as they were lit, their light casting long shadows over the gathered crowd. The healer spoke, his voice calm but commanding. We must cleanse this village of the darkness that has consumed it. The spirits demand unity, not division. The villagers moved in a solemn circle around the flames. The elders poured libations onto the ground, murmuring prayers. The children placed tokens of forgiveness into the fire, their small hands trembling. Warriors stood shoulder to shoulder, their heads bowed in respect. Voices rose together, creating a hymn of unity. The sound grew louder, carrying their pain and hope into the night. Sparks flew from the fire, and the tension that had gripped the village seemed to ease, if only slightly. Yet some wounds refused to heal. The betrayal lingered like a shadow. The bonds that had been broken would not mend easily. This scar will take time to fade, one elder said, his voice heavy with experience. Chipo sat alone at the edge of the crowd. Her eyes stared into the fire, but her mind seemed far away. She was now an orphan, her heart burdened with the weight of her parents' choices. Someone approached her, offering a hand, but she did not take it. The healer stood apart, watching the village. His mind turned over the events of the past days. The truth has a cost, he thought. It can heal, but it also wounds. He felt the burden of his decisions, but he also knew the village had needed the light, no matter how painful it had been to reveal. The fire burned low as the night deepened. The ashes of the past began to settle, and the villagers, weary but united, turned toward the future. The healer raised his staff, his voice steady. We will rebuild. We will honor those we have lost, and we will not let darkness divide us again. The village moved forward, forever changed. The spirits watched. From above, their presence a reminder of the power of truth and unity. The healer knew the road ahead would not be easy, but he walked it with purpose, leading the village toward a future shaped by understanding and trust. The fire had long burned out, but the weight of the night remained. Dumisani stood still, his staff pressed firmly into the earth. The silence of the village spoke louder than any words. Justice had been served, but its cost hung heavy in the air. The truth had come, unrelenting and raw, and its aftermath was not as simple as peace. The scars of betrayal lingered in every corner. Faces turned away from one another, old bonds now frayed. Neighbors who once shared laughter now avoided each other's gaze, their trust shattered by hidden lies. Dumisani walked among them, the heaviness of their silence pressing down on him. Love had cast a long shadow. He thought of Tendai's jealousy, how it had twisted something pure into something dangerous. Pride and obsession had transformed love into destruction. Dumisani sighed, the echoes of Nyasha's spirit still fresh in his mind. Love should heal, not harm, yet it had been wielded like a weapon. The descent into obsession stood as a stark warning. Tendai's madness was a reminder of what unchecked emotions could do. Dumisani replayed the man's confession, the trembling voice, the desperate pleas. He could not see past himself, Dumisani thought, and in his blindness, he destroyed more than his own life. The village, now divided, felt fragile. Dumisani sensed it in their movements, the hesitant way they spoke, the lines that had been drawn between families. The hidden truths that had come to light had left wounds not easily healed. Some truths brought closure, but others only deepened the cracks. Healing was more than uncovering answers. Dumisani paused, his gaze fixed on the baobab tree standing, tall in the distance. His role as a healer was not to merely reveal the sickness, but to mend what was broken. It was not enough to show the village the truth. He had to guide them toward understanding. Transparency would be their path forward. He thought of Nyasha's words, her spirit's warning against secrets and lies. The villagers needed to rebuild their trust, brick by brick, word by word. Honesty, even when painful, would be the foundation of their renewal. The wisdom of the ancestors offered a way. Dumisani turned to the sacred relics, the symbols of the village's long-standing traditions. The past had always provided answers, if only they listened. The ancestors had seen betrayal before and had overcome it. Their stories, woven into the land and its rituals, carried lessons of resilience and hope. The unseen wounds would need tending. Dumisani resolved to address the emotions left unspoken, the grief that lingered beneath the surface. Nyasha's daughter, silent and lost, came to his mind. She was one of many who carried the weight of what had unfolded. Healing would take time, but it was possible. He raised his voice, calling the village together. His words were steady, his conviction clear. We cannot let this define us. Let the truth guide us, not destroy us. The ancestors have given us this chance to learn, to grow, to unite. The vision of a renewed village filled his heart. He saw it in the faces of those who had gathered. Trust would not come easily, but it could be built. The ashes of betrayal would not be the final chapter. Together they would write a new story, one shaped by unity and understanding.